Welcome back. This one's for you.
Thank you.
So now we have the 4 case presentations by our TAs. So first up, Signe.
Hi everybody, can you hear me? I'm going to present the first case, so the milk fuzz or the taste of wine. And this one isn't working. That was. So first up, I'm going to start you off with some assumptions. We are assuming in this case that the young engineers are right about the sensor and the software development. And we're also assuming that the development manager that they go to first is generally dismissing opportunities within other markets. This is, yes. This leaves us with our key problem, that we have a poor company culture and in the organizational level, and our problem owner is the managing director. There you go. This gives us the following causal explanations: that we in general have bad communication in the company. The text said that the company, even though they are really trying to be market lead in the Danish dairy industry, they also want to be regarded, or are regarded, as a highly innovative company that are doing various measuring equipments within various industries. So the company strategy is not fully aligned throughout all of the company, and the floor engineers think that the market is convergent and not telling the nearest manager or simply just bypassing him. Because that they want to push out this idea that they have, even though there is not anything feasible yet. It's just based on a short, conversation they had at this festival with this vine farmer. And the development manager who are first rejecting this, idea is being very risk averse, and he's not thinking long term maybe, but he's assuming that even if we're assuming that the young engineers are right about the sensors. So if you look at our star model, you can see that we have this two-sided strategy up here, that they want to be the best market leader within Danish dairy industry, within this measuring thing, and that they want to develop and enhance their technology within the measuring equipment. However, that is not really communicated in their structure and their processes. So right now they're doing a functional structure where they have a semi-high hierarchy. So you have to go very much next level of managers before you go. You don't just go around. They end up doing though, but the formal structure is that they do that. And the processes is that they are, I'm just going to leave that one. That they are very formal. In the formal structure is that it's very vertical, but what they're actually doing are lateral processes. This is also a problem, and that affects the culture of the company. The people practices are that they're very specialized technical engineers, and as we know, we don't really know anything about the reward system, so we are assuming that it's that they have no money reward. And it is an eccentric motivation because they get to work with this technology and they get to do R&D. So if you look at the efficiency and effectiveness, you can see that I'm going to use this one again, that the managers, or at least the developing manager, is thinking very low efficiency, high effectiveness. He is doing what he really thinks is the best, and doing in regards to the dairy industry, but he's generally disregarding the second part of the strategy. And the engineers are doing the opposite, so they are high efficient but low effectiveness. They're not really doing what they should be doing compared to what the manager thinks, but they are trying to be very efficient and doing what they think is best for the company, but not not according to the manager. So if you go into the solution, we've identified the need for change, that they have a poor corporate culture. What they decide on to do, I'll go through the next slide. And because we have identified our problem owner to be the managing director, it will be a top-down changes implementing on tactical and operational levels. And afterwards, you of course have to assess the new culture and strategy. So deciding on what to change. they have this reputation of being a very innovative company, and we still want to endorse that, and to some extent invest and seek new markets with this technology that they are already developing, and perhaps even investigate other technologies that they could license off. To do so, we want to, instead of just having functional structures, we want to do a bit of a mix. So first off, create a committee that their only purpose is to evaluate all these new things that the engineers comes up with and see if there's any business potential in it. And then encourage better communication as always, whereas all ideas, not the one pursued, are evaluated and all this kind of thing. So we want to have a formal structure on where to go to if you have any new ideas, or if you come up with something new, instead of just bypassing your manager if he gives you a no. So deciding on what to change, as you can see, we want to really emphasize the whole being innovative, and therefore maybe pursuing new markets, but with the same technology. As the text said, the current technology that they already have can just be adjusted a bit, and then it actually fits to other purposes. And then we want to establish this evaluation committee and endorse better communication. So if you look at that in our STAR model, whoop, I forgot that one, no. You can see that even though we identified the problem being mainly in the structure and the processes department before, we of course changed something here. We're going to a more functional and project-based mix, so matrix structure in that way. But we also kind of need to address the people practices here. So what kind of people do we want to, do we need to promote, and do we need to hire in order to do this? The strategy is the same, and then we need to do something about the processes as well. So this one, as you can see, even though we identified it being only at the structures, we need to do something at all the levels in order for it to get the behavior that we want. And of course, with this, we hope to do a high efficiency, high effectiveness in the end. And if we do a robustness check, if this engineer is not right about the sensors, it will not affect the solution that we have created, because it's not product specific. It's more a culture thing, it's more a corporate structure thing. So we are changing the structure of the company with this new committee. And if he generally dismisses, not generally dismisses these opportunities, again, there is not something in place in the company that actually tells what is wrong and what should you do in this kind of situation. That was it for me. Is there any questions or comments? No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Nope. Looks strange, but it's better.
Good morning. Okay, so I'm going to quickly walk through case number 2, which is also my favorite. So we'll just start with a brief reminder of the details of soft performance, because I can understand that at this stage you probably have forgot some of the finer details of the case. And so as context, Casper and Luke, they're engineering students, and they founded this company 7 years ago. There are 25 students, a lot of which are part-time students from DTU, all of them from DTU. The first customer of this company was actually the largest financial company of the country, and this will have an implication further on. Right now, the employees relate to spend hours on projects, a lot in the continuous improvement part of the project, so not just delivering a final product and finishing. Furthermore, the information and the reports that are being generated right now, they're not being acted upon by the middle managers, so that's one of the issues we were going to look at. And the revenues are decreasing, and at the same time, the company is being squeezed by their own internal costs due to the time spent on the projects. We're going to have the following approach to the case, which is the similar as the one you've been seeing all across the previous cases. And we're going to start with our assumptions then. And in regards to assumptions, whoops, now it reacted.
It's just very slow.
Yeah, very slow. Yeah, okay. So in regards to the assumptions, we try to keep it simple, and we created only 3. The first one is that the hours that soft performance is actually working extra, they're not being paid for. The second one is that the company does not have the know-how inside to actually understand what are the right KPIs that the middle managers need. And the third one is that the company has limited financial resources. Going forward, step forward to the key problem and the key problem owner. We have these 2 key questions that we typically ask. The first one is, what is the key challenge facing the organization? And here we identify that to be that the profitability is declining. And a note here that profitability is looked and framed both in terms of the revenue, because they're having less customers knocking at their door, but also just because they're being squeezed by their own costs because of spending so many hours in the projects. So it's the 2 sides are a problem here. And in regards to the key problem owners, Casper and Lucas are the relevant people that have the power, competences, and resources to actually tackle this problem. So if we go to causal explanations, I like to break the approach always in 2 stages. The first one, using the tools to understand the business. What is the business problem that is facing the organization? And the second part, rather to understand the organization. So to link the strategy of the company with its own internal processes and organization, and bring some of the organizational theories on that stage. But first, understanding the business, starting with the business model canvas. The key things are outlined here. If we start with the value proposition, right now they are doing these customized performance indicators, KPIs, and their customer segment it started to be initially these few large contracts, and currently they're having smaller contracts. The channels are being very spontaneous and organic. It's basically word of mouth that they get new customers. And therefore, it's sort of a close interaction. There's not many layers between them and the customers. The revenue stream right now, it's just a project sale, so they sell it as a project. Cost structure is basically the salaries. The key resources are the recently graduate engineers, most of which student assistants, as we've mentioned. And their key activities is basically to develop the algorithm and to do the ongoing adjustments as customer demand is coming. If we double-click into the value proposition, then we get this idea that the product and service that's being offered is this automated management system, KPI, scorecard. But on the other hand, if we look at the customer jobs, actually the job that they need and want to get done is this whole concept about the functions of management, and then in this case, the middle managers. So they actually need to plan, they need to lead, and they need to control. And they would like to do that based on these relevant KPIs. In terms of gains, there's actually a nice match. There's the control over the company's performance, and that's also a gain for the customer. There's a greater overview and more transparency over the company's performance. But then when we look at the pain relievers, we see that there's a mismatch, because in the customer, we have a lack of clarity on what is the most relevant data to keep track of. The middle managers are not able to decide upon the KPIs that they get, so they are not actionable. And of course, if they fail to act, then they fail to deliver performance, which is the end goal. And right now, the only pain relievers that our product is giving is it's automated, so it generates these reports very quickly, and then they do dedicated support after the deployment. And finally, just as an overview of understanding the business, we can frame this in the efficiency effectiveness matrix, and we can say that soft performance is having both low efficiency and low effectiveness. Low efficiency because they're spending too much resources to complete the task, and low effectiveness because they are actually completing a task that the customer doesn't need or want. And of course, if the requirements of the project that they're leading are changing, then of course it's very hard to be efficient. So they're on the lower end of the spectrum. If we switch to our favorite star model in order to understand the organization and what's going inside there, then we can start with the strategy, and we see that there actually is no clear strategy definition. We don't know who are we targeting, because we started with the large financial institution and now we're getting smaller customers. So it's not clear who our customer segment is. And are we a product or a service company? It's also not clear, because we're selling these projects and it doesn't really, is transparent where does our interaction finishes. In regards to structure, we can see that there are no clear functional areas, because there's no difference between, there are no specific account managers. There's just the CEOs who take care of the sales, and then the software developers. Processes, this is a very important part, because we are currently unable to set the project requirements from the beginning. This leads to lots of iterations. There's also not a structured sales process, because it's just word of mouth. And finally, there's no knowledge sharing platform from and across projects. In terms of rewards, this is not a particularly challenging part of the problem, because the employees actually find the tasks challenging, so there's some sort of intrinsic motivation going on here. And then in regards to people, there's high churn due to the fact that we're focusing mostly on student assistants. And here I would like you to focus now on the black markers, because I think these are the main areas where the misalignment in the STAR model is present. Because if you see that we are not clear if we are a product or service company, that is directly linked to our people and our processes. And this is, of course, if we don't have our processes set clear, then we don't know where do we finish, where our interaction finishes. If we have a lot of people that are student assistants and are short-term employees, that really hinders the knowledge development and the knowledge sharing across the organization. And of course, the fact that there is no structure that who actually understands the business and who actually understands the software and who is actually in charge of the sales, this actually contributes to this confusion. So at this point, I think it's a good idea to do a summary of the causes that we've diagnosed so far. And the first one being, there's no clear value proposition. Customer pains are not being relieved by pain relievers, and the customer jobs are not entirely satisfied. This insight came out of the value proposition canvas. There's not a clear strategy. The market segment is unclear, and the product versus service offering is also not clear. This insight came mostly from the STAR model. And there's the need to align the revenue stream with the company strategy, and this highlights mostly from the business model canvas. If we try and link now these potential causes to possible solution, then the first idea that comes is, okay, soft performance needs to sharpen their value proposition. They need to go from automated KPIs to tailored management systems based on some business insight. Second, they need to expand their core competences to include business knowledge. And this can be either by hiring full-time employees and then making sure that they learn from project to project, or just to partner up with management consultants or some sorts of business intelligence. Third, to sharpen the strategy of the company, so product or service offering, and to align it with a suitable revenue stream. And as we can see, I think this solution approach is clearly targeting the main issues diagnosed, and this is sort of a link that's important to make. Very quickly, how this impacts, again, the value proposition. So if we see if instead of automated, we actually have these tailored management systems, then this is actually helping the company to gain clarity on what are the relevant KPIs. And if we choose an approach of co-designing the KPIs with the middle managers, then the middle managers will actually be able to act upon those KPIs, and therefore to deliver performance as well. And, of course, to deliver their customer jobs effectively. So we see that we have a very different value proposition canvas coming out of the solution. If we revisit the STAR model, then if we start with a strategy, then it's about clarifying if we become a service company. And in this case, we would suggest so. In terms of structure, there will be a clear structure where functions of sales, development, and key account managers are distinct, and they know their roles and responsibilities. For projects, for processes, project requirements need to be clear, and there should be a knowledge platform in place that people can share knowledge across, and to basically to learn what sort of business metrics are most important. Rewards, and a reward could be that employees get rewarded when they finish their project within time, within cost, and within scope, rather than just prolonging the project indefinitely. And finally, the people we've already mentioned, we can hire full-time employees and maybe less for the same cost of hiring a lot of part-times, or partner up with a consultancy or some other sorts. So here, most of the things we have mentioned: full-time employees, for key resources, knowledge sharing, customized management systems. For channels, we have structured sales channels, and revenue streams, we actually align to have a revenue stream that actually happens after the product is delivered, as some sort of ongoing maintenance of the system. Finally, we finish with a robustness check. So first, we assume that the extra hours were not being paid. And actually, if that is not the case, then the problem really lies in charging those extra hours correctly, because maybe the problem is just about the pricing method over there. So this doesn't really constitute a major problem. Soft performance does not have the internal expertise to assess what are the right KPIs. Well, if they do, then there's definitely an organization or a process misalignment in the way that they are not building the right KPIs with the customer, or they are not sharing this knowledge across the organization. And again, the implication this would have for our solution is that then we would not need to partner up or to recruit experts. We would just need to focus internally within the organization. Finally, soft performance has limited financial resources. Here we concluded that the effect is limited in the solution because we are changing a lot of part-time employees by fewer full-time employees, and therefore the cost structure wouldn't really be impacted heavily. And that's that. If you have any questions or suggestions, comments, now would be the time. If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, is this PDF? What's wrong with it? Where is this one? Can everybody hear me okay? Great. All right, everybody. I'll be going through the continuous walk. Hopefully that's nice and fresh in your minds, because it was only 2 weeks ago. So it was an interesting case for everyone to go through, especially because depending on your assumptions and depending on what you thought was the best possible course of action, it really changed what your solutions were going to be. So from an assumptions point of view, this particular approach is assuming that globalization will lead to a more market demand for sort of higher quality Asian pre-cooked food, and in the case of Balloon Foods, spring rolls. That the IT system that the current engineers and technicians are talking about will lead to greater efficiency within their production processes, and that also that Balloon Foods has the internal technical capability to implement the IT solution that they want to do and that they want to develop. And it's obvious, hopefully from the case that you've all read, that the key problem is that the current production procedure and strategy of Balloon Foods is not viable for a market that's changing with social trends happening and sort of more healthy food being needed by other people and families. And that the problem owner is Mr. Balloon in this case at the strategic level up here. Some causes from the case. Balloon Foods has been successful in the past, and I think that's also a big detriment to this case because he's also been resting on his laurels. He's been a bit used to having a good revenue stream and having a good production process and hasn't needed to think about changing or needing to think about the threat of sort of competitors in the environment, and for that matter, to go further, what's actually changing in the macro environment around him. That they don't have a long-term strategy. The company was pre-cooked Asian frozen meals, and they didn't really have a long-term strategy to begin with, and they just wanted to start some operations, sell some food, and make some dollars. And I think they haven't really developed a long-term strategy to see how they can change for the future. It's also clear that Balloon Food is not an innovative company. They have innovative people within the company, but the company itself is not innovating. And you'll see that through the STAR model when we look at sort of the processes and what's going wrong internally. And also, a bit of a side note, Mr. Balloon is also a bit of a micromanager. I know that the company is quite small and there's very few departments to go through, but he seems to be in every single one of the departments, which, depending on your approach, you can also look into the 4 functions of leadership and how that affects the company and its operations. Now that we've mentioned the causes, it's good to also back up these causes with the frameworks that you've been learning in the course to date. And so with the STAR model here, we can see that the strategy really impacts, especially with all of the connections, what's going on within the company. They've got a short-term strategy, and if the market was to change quite rapidly, Mr. Balloon and his Balloon Foods company couldn't really adapt and isn't very flexible to the changing needs of customers to produce healthier food if that's the trend that they're observing in the environment. Then we've got some other small things like the structure. It's very simple, it's very departmentalized. There's very few sort of extra departments that need to happen, and there's a short power distance to go. You don't need to keep reaching up beyond managers to get some things done. There's very few people that you need to convince. I mentioned processes earlier. There's a poor flow of information. We know the technician and the engineer kind of agree with Chang in the sense that there needs to be more innovation, the production process could be better, and that things could be more innovative within the company to ensure that they have a better running company for the future. So that's a small side issue. Rewards, the employees are quite highly rewarded. They're very satisfied. They have lots of parties. They have a bit of fun. And I think that's also reflected in the way that with the people, they're very highly motivated and highly experienced employees within the company. One of the employees actually just celebrated his 25th year of working for them. So that's quite important when you look at the company as a whole. Again, to support the causes, we look at a SWOT model. And quite quickly, you can see the internal weaknesses and the external threats that are facing the company. Lack of innovation and flexibility makes them hard to adapt. We've got no long-term strategy, which makes them a bit difficult to foresee the future and what they should do and if they should even decide on any possible changes. And they also have an outdated production technique. From the case, you can hear that the food that's coming out and being put into the spring rolls is quite old. It was developed a while ago, and it's been running quite, per se, efficiently. So they kind of have kept it. And also the threats, future competition with higher efficiency is also a good threat to them, and you'll see that later on in the effectiveness and efficiency model. And also globalization. That is also a threat, but quite clearly it's also an opportunity. It doesn't always have to be a very negative focus in these cases. An opportunity can present itself through globalization because it's a way for them to sort of generate a new revenue stream, which I think is quite interesting. And then finally, something else to support the causes is the 4 building blocks of competitive advantage. We can see that not all of these bits are green here. We've got quality. Customers are defining the quality of the product that Mr. Balloon and his company are creating, and it's kind of meeting expectations at the moment. Efficiency, though, can be improved, so we've put that in orange. And then innovation and responsiveness to customers are both in red because the company is lacking innovation, and from our assumptions, we believe that the responsiveness to customers is not going to happen in the future if the company stays as it is at the moment. So it kind of brings us to the solutions part of the case analysis. And with this case, it's quite interesting because there are lots of ways you can approach it. I've listed quite a few here, and we'll eliminate them as we go. But quite often, people forget that doing nothing is also a conscious decision and is also a path that you can take when you're investigating something. But as we can see from the efficiency and effectiveness model, right now, Mr. Balloon and his company is here in yellow. We believe that they're choosing the right kind of goals, per se, because they've been quite successful up until now. They've got a strong revenue stream, quite a stable customer base, and they're doing it efficiently. However, we can see that we want to move them into this thriving section here, where they're highly efficient, highly effective, but also if they tend to do nothing, they're going to die quite quickly in this low efficient, low effectiveness zones when they choose the wrong goals and they're doing things inefficiently, as customers could quite easily overtake them by being a little bit more efficient and having a cheaper product for the same quality. So that kind of eliminates doing nothing. So we'll get rid of that. Then we'll look at potentially buying the wok, and we've got to really consider what Mr. Chang and his company is proposing. Mr. Chang has developed this, patented this idea of a wok that will cook the food at a better rate and it won't make the food go all boiled and dry. But what he's actually saying is that it's a product that he wants to market out as a general product to other companies doing the similar thing that you are. And right now, that's not really what you want, because what you want is to secure competitive advantage over your customers for the future. So you can't just buy Mr. Chang's product and he can go sell it to your competitor, because what you really want to do is to have competitive advantage over them. So it's not really a viable idea just at the moment. The business models don't match. Ideally, later on, you want to see if you can partner with Chang to see if you could buy his product from your competitors, and that might make it an option later, but we'll revisit that. But at the moment, the business models aren't aligned. You want exclusive access. Mr. Chang wants to sell it for a profit. So the things that need to be worked out there. So it sort of eliminates choosing just the continuous wok or having your current procedures and a continuous wok operation. And then we'll see how, when you look at their low-cost differentiation strategy matrix for a business-level strategy, right now they're in this red zone here where their cost is lower than their competitors from their current technique, which is why they've probably got such a good market share and a strong, stable base. And they're sort of differentiated because the product is quite normal. But what we'd really want to see them is to get up into this zone where they're more differentiated and possibly a higher cost because of that. But I think with the market saying that we've assumed that the trend will have higher quality, pre-cooked Asian food for the future, then we could assume that customers are willing to pay just a little bit more money for that. So we can see them wanting to move up into this space. And to do that leads us down to these assumptions, these solutions here, which is to look into some research and development and then produce the IT system that has already been flagged by the engineers and the technicians within the company. So this is our solution. We want to develop the IT system that currently the technicians and the engineers have looked at. We know that it'll increase the efficiency of your production, which hopefully can also lead to some better quality food at the current stage. It sounds like it could definitely lead that way, but that's one of the first parts of the strategy. We also want to investigate a possible joint venture with Chung. We don't want to rely on his technology just at the moment because we're not sure if he wants to let it be exclusively ours. And there are also other things that need to be worked out in terms of that, in terms of who will make it, who will test it, who will build it. There are lots of unknowns with regards to the continuous wok, which is why there needs to be a little bit more of a discussion and investigation about a joint venture. And then also to set up an R&D team to investigate new spring roll technologies, because if we're going to currently increase our efficiency, we'd also like to be more effective in the future and find technologies, find ways of producing spring rolls that are healthier and that our customers will want to eat in the future. So we want to keep pace with the changing customer segment, and that potentially provides us with opportunities to rebrand, have different strategies, possibly have two products. These are also more detailed aspects that you can go out through in your own reports if you've got an opportunity like this. And then comes us to the implementation phase, the four stages of change. We've already had the assessment by Mr. Balloon. We've already decided on the things that we want to do. And now it's implementation. And we see that it'll be more of a top-down change because the company is very established. They're people who have worked there for a really long time, and it's going to take quite a lot of effort to change them in the ways that they work and the roles and the responsibilities that they currently have. So it'll be top down, the communication will have to come from Mr. Balloon, and it's important to bring all of the employees on board during this process because that's the only way that you'll have a successful implementation. And then post this, we can do a bit of an evaluation to see if it works out quite well. So just to summarize, we'll look at a business canvas. I didn't look at it beforehand just because it was quite obvious potentially to fill it out. But now with the new parts that we filled in, we've got a new value proposition. They're now doing a high quality Chinese food pre-cooked product. They still have a new customer segment for supermarkets, which is now a higher quality mass market. Potentially a new brand, a new promotion. We have an IT system down here, and research and development is also changing in terms of their key resources. Which brings us to the robustness check. We assumed that globalization will lead to a market demand for a pre-cooked Asian food. If that does not occur, we would still implement the IT system to improve our efficiency. That will still keep us along the efficiency curve and better than our competitors, which means we'll still be able to potentially even grab more market share and maintain our position as a market leader. If the IT system, however, does not improve the production efficiency, we'll have to extend the research and development scope from just beyond looking into cooking techniques, but also to what we can find in terms of efficiency rather than quality. And then lastly, if Balloon Foods does not have the technical skills to implement the IT system that they've been working on, then we'll have to hire some external specialists to do so, to implement that solution. And that is all from me. Are there any questions? This case specifically was one where you could take many different approaches, so feel free to ask anything. Nope.
Good. Thank you so much.
Okay. That should be fine. Perfect. Okay. Yeah.
Last but not least.
Okay. Hello, I'm Paolo. I'm doing the human tech case, the case we had in the classroom last Wednesday. So here I will show you how I would do it. So we have three assumptions. The first one is that is the top management that direct the innovation and development department toward other tasks not related to development of a new product. We assume that because of this quote, especially from the text where one of the department's members state that he's asked to attend other non-related tasks. The second assumption is that currently human tech has not current workforce to deal with the internal IT problems. And we can assume that because we find out from the text that people from the innovation department has to deal with those problems, and so the IT people are not covering that need of support. And finally, we assume that human tech has financial coverage to hire new personnel. Be quite careful when you make those kind of assumptions in the way that they doesn't conflict with some information that there are on the text. So always check before do something like that. Okay, so the key problem I found is that the innovation and development department is not able to develop new products, and this could threaten the future possibility of competing in the market. So is a problem related to strategy. And for this reason, the top manager is the main problem owner, because they have the task to develop the strategy and develop the right organizational design factor to make it work. So the main causes of this inefficiency is that the department's members are not able to cooperate and support each other, and they are focused on personal goal, and they spend their time basically on secondary question, not primary related to the strategy, so the development of new product. And as consequence, the morale and the motivation is low. But now we are going to see why I came up with those causes. So if we see the SWOT, we can notice that there are opportunities and threats related to the market and to the possibilities to do some new products. And this is what actually the management of human tech found out. So they developed a strategy that is aimed to cope with those threats and opportunities. But what is not working is how the strategy was implemented in the organization. So there is a poor implementation of the organization for the goals. And we can use the 4 managerial activities to go deeper into this and underline that the planning was done properly by the management, while the organization task was not done in the optimal way because it was just added on the top of the existing organization, a new department, and there was no other change. If we look at the leading task, we see that there is no daily follow-up and the consideration by the management. So the team members of the innovation and the development department are a bit left by themselves, and they can't figure out what they are doing, basically, and which is the purpose of their goal. And then we could also improving the controlling potentially, because there is only one main KPI for this department by now, that is the number of product developed so far. So we can also have a better understanding of what is going on by looking at the sources of managerial power. We have a really strong influence of expert power. Those people in the innovation and the development department have strong IT skills, and for this reason they are called many times from other people in other departments to deal with the problem related to support of IT facilities and system. We don't have a high referent power for what concern the management, because their lack of consideration and leading activities toward the department members makes them think that they are not so reliable in the way they lead the team. And yeah, and so the legitimate power is affected as well. So if we analyze the group development stage, we can see that the group failed to get into the norming phase. So far we are in the storming, and it was not really possible to them to get along with each other in a good way, because so far they were not able to cooperate on the goal that were set for the team. So they worked a lot, but for other purposes, so they didn't had a healthy competition, and they didn't achieve anything so far. So it was not possible to build a cohesiveness among the group members. And this is something that affects the motivation as well. So we hope to address that by reducing and limiting the responsibility of the innovation and development group for the task they were aimed to. So to the fulfillment of the goal that is the development of new product. So the innovation and development department will be moved from being a normal function to a staff function, and it will communicate with the other product department through the manager that will have a liaison role with the head of the functions. And new IT personnel will be hired to cover the IT support tasks that are anyway demanded by members of the organization. So, if the team will be focused just on the development of new goal, and they will have the resource in terms of time, then hopefully they will start performing and achieving the organizational goals that were set for them, and finally feeling that something has been accomplished and their work has a purpose. And this should motivate the team and help also to create a sense of group that is needed in this case. So here we can see that at the beginning the strategy was properly set, but there was not a solid action on the other corners of the star model. So we are going to redesign all the other corners more than strategy. So we've seen that we had the change in structure by moving the department in another location, and by changing the role, by adding some communication role to the managers. And then we had also some smaller change in the process. So just carry out few projects at the time, and redefine the agenda periodically. Then we will have some rewards by making the manager follow more frequently the teamwork, and so the team members, by having more consideration from the manager, will hopefully feel their work more meaningful. And finally, there will be some change in the people, so new personnel for IT support and group project for the department. So not people working individually on not related activities, but group project for product development purposes. So finally, we can check our assumption. If the top management doesn't direct the workforce toward the IT problem solving, then someone else is probably doing that. So we have to instruct them about giving to the team the right goal and directing them toward the right work. Then, if human tech has not sufficient workforce to provide the internal IT support, then we will just not need to recruit more IT person, and the current IT personnel will be enough to deal with all the IT problem. And if human tech has no financial coverage to hire the IT personnel, then we have to reconsider the strategy feasibility with the current resources. Because if we don't have enough people and enough coverage, then we can't carry on both the IT support and a new strategy. So we have to consider also this. If you have any question, yeah, that's the right moment.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So now we saw 4 different ways of tackling these cases. They are different in their approach, they use different models, but they are all good because they use the cases and they use the models and they link them. They use the models to inform our understanding of the cases, and they use the models also to form a new strategy and a new way to implement. And that's what makes a good report and analysis. That is that we can see the link between the model and the case. Why do you perceive that? What is it that you do? How do you use a model? And we can see the results. So it's that structured approach that's really good. So we're going to take a short 7-8 minute break, so get a breather. It's been a long time, so 5 minutes or 25 minutes to 12 be in here, and I'm going to go through the tests and how we're going to do that next week.